Hi everyone, welcome to Coffee Chat. Today, our topic is the second part of the support services for deaf and hard of hearing students in the Westman area. So we are really happy to have today Karen Graham and Meaghan Gessner. Yeah. So thank you for coming here.
Thanks for having us.
To Nipoa to visit us today for this interview.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we start discussing about our topic today, can you introduce yourself and your roles?
Sure. Well, my name's Karen Graham. I'm the consultant for deaf and hard of hearing students, and I work out of the Brandon office. And I've been working in Deaf Ed now for about 37 years, and will be retiring very, very soon. I work out of the Brandon area, and I cover about half of the schools in Brandon, and then I cover about 8 other school divisions in the Westman region. So I won't list all the school divisions, but and I provide support in schools wherever there's a deaf or hard of hearing student. I work with the resource teachers, with the classroom teachers, and with the EAs, just providing resources and strategies and information about how to work with a deaf or hard of hearing student in a mainstream school, how to be inclusive.
And my name is Meaghan Gessner, and I'm the educational interpreting consultant. So I'm a trained interpreter, and my role is to support trained interpreters or signing EAs who are working with deaf kids who are using American Sign Language to communicate. And I support different divisions throughout the whole province. So my main office is in Winnipeg, but I go north, south, east, and west. I'm everywhere, depending on where there's a kid who uses sign language. So some years I don't have a lot of northern travel, and some years I have a lot, for example. And I've been an interpreter for almost 19 years now, and in this role for almost eight years.
Okay, wow. Do you also have like other organizational affiliations aside from your positions, or?
So I do. I'm also a member of MAVLI, which is the Manitoba Association of Visual Language Interpreters, as well as CASLI, the Canadian Association of Sign Language Interpreters, which is just our professional organization of interpreters across Canada.
Wow. How about you, Karen?
Well, I guess I'm a member of Canadian Association of Teachers of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, but there used to be meetings in Manitoba and Canada-wide meetings, but there haven't been for several years, so I'm not sure exactly what's happening, but I'm still a member.
Okay, so what are the existing supports and services for deaf and hard of hearing students in Manitoba?
Just within our department, or for all of Manitoba? Just within our department, So there are other agencies and other parts of the government that provide support for different age groups and that sort of thing. But for us, we were mandated for kindergarten to grade 12. Any students who have a hearing loss, a permanent hearing loss, so a sensorineural loss, or a permanent conductive loss. And there are 5 teachers of the deaf and hard of hearing within our group, 5 trained teachers, and then 2 of the an educational interpreting consultant and an ASL consultant in our group, as well as a speech and language pathologist. So that's our team. And we collaborate with other teachers of the deaf in the province, like the urban teachers of the deaf in Winnipeg, and the preschool services for deaf and hard of hearing students. As kids are coming into kindergarten, we collaborate with them to make a smooth transition. What else? What can you add, Meaghan?
I think that's it. Our main focus is K to 12.
K to 12.
Yeah.
So, like for you, like the providing some supervisions to the interpreters, right?
So my role, I help some schools with job postings to advocate to make sure if there's an interpreter needed. Providing an interpreter and providing them with information on the agencies that we have in Manitoba to book interpreters. I also can do a screening of the skills if a division has already hired somebody, either an interpreter or a signer. I can come and screen them so that schools can get an idea of where their skills are at for interpreting and how much information is maybe being missed in the interpretation. I also provide like PDs, as does Karen, for staff. And that can be for just signing staff or school-wide staff, explaining the role of an interpreter or what it's going to be like having somebody in the classroom interpreting, standing next to you all the time. So those are like the main parts of my role.
Okay. Cody mentioned in our interview with him about I think some schools only provide like EAs and some interpreters.
Yeah.
So that's different, right?
So a trained interpreter is somebody who's gone to university and has graduated from a recognized program. So I graduated from the interpreting program that was a joint program between Red River College in Winnipeg and the University of Manitoba. So it was a 4-year degree program. So that would be a trained interpreter. A signing EA would be somebody who's taken some levels of ASL, so 101, 102, 103, up to 203, those kind of levels. And so their skills are much lower than a trained interpreter because they don't have those interpreting skills, and they just don't even necessarily have all the actual vocabulary that's being used. They don't know how to sign the words yet. So then I would support them in that as well.
Like in the current situation now, does like interpreters are in the cities, while in rural areas, do we have limited interpreters? Or
there are limited interpreters in public schools in Manitoba as well as in the community. There's right now an interpreter shortage that would be across Canada. And I think that's just people are now hiring deaf people for jobs, right? Which is a good thing. But then they need interpreters for their job interviews and their job training and different workshops or meetings. And there's just not enough interpreters around right now.
Like for you, the schools that you're handling, do they have EAs and interpreters as well, or?
When I worked in Winnipeg, school division, there were interpreters in our schools or very highly skilled signing EA staff. There was a separate classification in Winnipeg School Division for trained ASL English interpreters and for different levels of skill for signing EA staff. So that made a difference in the hiring, I think, in Winnipeg School Division. So I was there for 11 years. But in the rural areas, let me think, I've worked out of the Westman area as a consultant for deaf and hard of hearing for, I think, 25 years altogether. And my experience has been I've only had one trained ASL English interpreter who worked with a deaf student in Rolling River School Division, actually. So one in those 25 years. It is really difficult to attract trained interpreters to the rural areas because I think it's very isolating, for one thing, professionally, but also, I mean, the school divisions need to have that separate classification to hire trained ASL English interpreters for their deaf students because they are professionals, right? They're trained professionals. And do you have more to add to that?
I just think that lots of divisions don't know that there's a difference and so don't realize that they should post for a trained interpreter. So we did have one other school division that posted but then couldn't fill it with a trained interpreter. But I think most don't even post for a trained interpreter in this area.
Is there also like a lack of interpreters in the? So not much people are taking it, maybe because maybe if they have families or related to someone who has.
I think it's kind of both ways. The divisions aren't posting, so interpreters aren't having it on their radar that maybe that school is wanting an interpreter, because some people, like the one that we did have in Rolling River, she loved it and it worked. She lived in Brandon, but it was an easy enough commute, right? Where if somebody would move to Brandon, to a city, like this area is an easy enough commute, right, to be able to come. But it's just never been posted as an option. Yeah.
I mean, there are signing EAs who have worked in the school division and then have just fallen in love with interpreting and been inspired to go to Red River Community College and take their interpreting program. And there's one who's graduated who actually was a resident of Austin, which isn't very far from Liway. She graduated from the interpreter training program.
We've had two from the Brandon area that have graduated.
And then another one. Oh, who's the other one who graduated?
Nicole and Lane.
Oh, of course, Nicole and Lane. I forgot about Nicole. Sorry, Nicole. Yes, and Nicole also worked in Brandon School Division as a signing EA, and then went out east to finish her. She went to Red River first, and then went out east to finish her interpreter training because the program's been paused for a little while at Red River College, but I believe is starting up again. And then there's
another one who's currently in it,
waiting, who's going back into the Red River program to finish her interpreting. So, people do start sometimes in the mainstream school and then become inspired to continue on with their education and become a trained interpreter.
So that's just one area of So and you maybe already raised that. That's a challenge. One of the challenges that you are facing now.
It's a huge challenge.
Huge challenge for the deaf community. What other challenges do you think are you facing? In dealing with
I guess there are many. I guess part of the challenge with the signing EA staff is, I guess number one, is the training, like getting them their ASL skills. And a lot of the VISTA courses can be done through video conferencing now. They can be done online through different agencies. But part of it is that the signing EA can take their VISTA program, their ASL program, online, and they can either pay for it themselves, and it's pretty expensive, right? For each level, or we sometimes have school divisions that will actually pay for the signing EAs to pick up all of their ASL levels. But it's not just studying during your ASL course. It's also maybe going to the ASL immersion, which is run by Manitoba People in Winnipeg every summer for a week, and learning more and increasing your ASL skills at the ASL immersion program and learning more about deaf culture. But it's also going online and picking up more ASL skills from watching ASL videos, from watching Daily Moth, doing the homework you need to do to be prepared, to improve your skills and be prepared to come to school and have, keep increasing your ASL skills and your ability to interpret without having that training. It's a big challenge, I think, for any signing EAs who are hired in the school divisions, and for the school divisions to support their progress in being able to provide that skill. And also maybe finding a deaf mentor in the community, that you can meet with for coffee or go shopping together or something, and increase your ASL skills by just being in the deaf community. So that it's a challenge in the rural areas, especially because there's less number of deaf people available in the rural areas than there are in the city. But there are many other challenges as well. I mean, myself, there's constant changing and expanding, I guess, of the amplification options for students. We're seeing more students with cochlear implants, more students with the BAHA hearing aids, the bone-anchored hearing aids, more students using different kinds of personal microphones in the classroom or sound field systems. So the technology for just amplification for hard of hearing students has really exploded. And then other technologies, right? Like about speech to text technology being used, computerized note taking, I still feel very strongly should be used, but maybe it's gone a little bit by the wayside because of speech to text
Even all the
apps.
apps.
All the apps that are available. And yeah, you go ahead.
And just some of the issues that we find in some of the schools is just with their technology. So if a student gets the iPad, it's just all the firewalls that have to be removed so that they can access some of these specific apps. Because like even YouTube, for example, you have to be careful with what kids are watching on YouTube, but there are really great ASL resources on YouTube. So it's a kind of it's a hard one because you need to make sure that the kids are watching appropriate things. But at the same time, it's just those extra steps to be able to get them access to accessing some of those websites like YouTube. And for some of the more rural and northern communities, I would say just Wi-Fi and not having the same accessibility to technology as especially in the city. The city has way more supports than any of your rural people. So just proximity of where they live would be a challenge too.
Like a student in Brandon or in Winnipeg or in a lot of the communities can use speech to text on their cell phone. But there are communities, one that I go to in particular too, that don't have cell phone access. There's no cell phone access in their community. So they can't use speech to text. Or maybe I shouldn't say they can't. If the Wi-Fi is working well in their community, they can use it, through their iPad or through internet with their cell phone. But it does present more challenges, right? When there isn't strong Wi-Fi access.
So that's also one of the major. You already mentioned about the resources available. So you also provide that to the students or the teachers, like the resources that are available.
Exactly. In the fall, I spend about 2 weeks sending out online resources and sort of, communication tip sheets and, simulations of hearing loss and that sort of thing. Because I think it starts with an awareness. So with a new classroom teacher, and often a new resource teacher, it starts with becoming aware and understanding what it means to have a hearing loss and what the challenges are for that student and what they need to have access to communication and information in their classroom. And there's a lot of information that comes in our classrooms, like over the speaker. The teacher has to be able to circulate around the classroom, to work with other students. How does the student get access to question and answer or discussion? Assemblies, special presentations, field trips. How do they have communication access in all those situations? So in the fall, we spend a lot of time sending out information to people in the schools to sort of start that conversation and get them set, to begin the school year. And then in certain schools, I will be coming out with bags and boxes of language and mostly language and literacy resources and tutoring resources for schools, but not in every school. Just in certain schools where the need is very, very high.
So how about you, Meaghan? What other resources do you?
So when I go to a school and I'll observe the staff who are trying their best to interpret the information, and based on some of the classes that they're interpreting or working with or tutor sessions, then after every visit I will send, it's called a consult note, so just kind of a summary of what I observed, what I did, and I always provide resources after every visit. So if a signer is trying to interpret like volcanoes, for example, well, we have a great website that is a good free resource that they can watch and learn the ASL to go along with that. So I will send that to them ahead of time. I also use an app that's called, it was called Glide. It's now changed to Lloyd, but it's the same app. It's free. And so I have all of my caseload has access to contacting me on that app. And so if they're got the prep of whatever class that they're going to be interpreting and they don't know the information or they don't know the words, then they'll send me a list to say, can you show me how to interpret a list of all of these things, and then I can video record myself giving the answers, signing it back to them, and then they can go back and watch it over and over so that they're learning the right way of interpreting these concepts. And so that's something that I'm answering glides every day, pretty much, from different schools, from different signers or interpreters, because they've worked with a teacher to know that next week they're going to be working on whatever new unit, and they need to know how to interpret that. And it's, I would say, a misunderstanding is lots of people think that the earlier levels is easier to interpret than high school, because in high school you're doing your biology and your calculus and your physics. But I would argue that it's just as hard in elementary, because there's so many rhymes and singing songs and lots of action. And for lots of the deaf kids, they're language deprived, coming in with less language than the other hearing peers. And so it's kind of the job of the signer or the interpreter to model that language for them. So information and the content might be easier to interpret because they know what the words mean, but they still need to have the language to be able to interpret it in ASL for these kids, and that's the struggle.
Especially with concepts, like it's difficult to for them to understand the concept. Compared to if it's visual, like like things that So do you do provide any other resources for that, especially with understanding the concepts? Are there any strategies or
different strategies? I always will say is preparation. So for all interpreters, whether you're trained or not, or many years of experience or a brand new interpreter, every interpreter does prep. So preparation before the assignment actually happens, whether that's in a K-12 or just a community setting. You're finding out what's going to be talked about. You're finding out who's going to be there. You're talking, like in schools, for example, when they have assemblies or have guest presenters come to the school, what's the presentation going to be about? What are the topics? Who's presenting? Do they have an accent? Have they worked with an interpreter before? Do they know that you're going to be standing at the front? All of those things. And then the signers or interpreters hopefully get that prep ahead of time, so that often it's a PowerPoint. They can read through it ahead of time to go, I don't know what this word means in English. So I need to learn it in English if I'm going to try and sign it in ASL, right? So I always say prep. We need them to prep. And in schools, I think it's more so, because if the signers or interpreters don't know how to interpret it, the deaf kids are not getting the same access to the curriculum.
So we'll go now to I think more positive. Have you seen any like best practices in school that you visited, or
Can I talk about Calvin?
that they initiate?
When you say best practice, the first thing that pops into my mind is the programs that we had in Winnipeg School Division. So as an option for students who lived in the catchment area of Winnipeg School Division, you had to live in that catchment area. No matter where in the division you lived, a student could be bused to one of 3 or 4 schools in River Heights area. J.B. Mitchell and Grosvenor were the elementary schools that had programs for deaf students, deaf and hard of hearing students established in the school. And then River Heights was the middle school, and then Calvin High School, where I was for 11 years, was the high school program. And so the students would be bused to that school for their education. And in the school, there was a trained, experienced teacher, the deaf and hard of hearing, in each of those program schools, full-time, to support the EAs and the teachers and those students. There were very highly skilled signing EA staff, as well as interpreters, trained interpreters. There were computerized note takers who were highly trained and provided an outstanding service to the hard of hearing students. And we could also use the computerized note-taking services for some of the deaf students who wanted those notes as well. So, and many of the students also used personal FM systems. Some used soundfield systems. We had events that the kids went to at MSD or in the Winnipeg community, like at a bowling alley or something, where the kids got together, and it's very empowering. We also were able to bring in guest speakers. Like at Calvin every year we had Reaching Equality Employment Services and Manitoba Possible come in to talk about first jobs, how to get supported for going in, you know, job training and working into a paying job. Driver's license, getting your driver's license. There was a woman at MSD who taught the driver ed program for signing deaf students. And when there's a program, the teachers learn to be inclusive and to adapt when needed, and how to work with interpreters and computerized note takers, because it just becomes an every year sort of matter of business. Oh, I have another deaf student in my class this year, or I have three deaf students and 2 hard of hearing students in my English class or my social studies class this year. It just becomes sort of matter of fact because they've had so much experience having deaf students in there and hard of hearing students in their classrooms. So they know already what to do. You're not starting from square one every year, you know. So the teachers have become very experienced, and with extracurricular events as well. So there were kids who were on committees in the school, who played on the football team, who played on the basketball team, all kinds, you know, they were involved in all kinds of extracurricular activities and sports within their school. And the division supported providing, you know, trained or highly skilled signing EA staff to interpret at the practices and the games, and even out of town games. Yeah, so, you know, it was a lot of support, I think, because they have a larger tax base too in Winnipeg, right, than smaller communities. So they were able to do that, and it really was fantastic. I was quite sad, actually, to see that the programs were shut down several years ago. So the programs are no longer running. But best practice, in my mind, was those programs in Winnipeg School Division. In the rural communities, best practice is, I'd say, advertising for a trained interpreter. Supporting, I guess, the college and advocating to have more access for people to go get their training as trained to become trained ASL English interpreters. And also, I mean, I have to say, Brandon School Division has established a hub for deaf and hard of hearing students at one of their schools. And so we have 10 students at that school right now, 8 who are using ASL and 2 that are hard of hearing. So that is a best practice as well, to see in a school division that you have several deaf and hard of hearing students and establish a school where you're going to put in the resources to support those kids. So
how about for you, Meaghan?
For me, I think similar to what Karen said, is just posting to make sure that they're at least posting and advertising for trained interpreters. And one thing that divisions are working on, and lots have made this change already, is making a separate classification for an interpreter, so that an interpreter who's trained is getting paid more than a signing EA who doesn't have the same qualifications, right? We advocate a trained interpreter, like I said, has a 4-year degree, right? So it's, and prior to that, to take their levels of ASL is about 2 years. So it's 6 years of schooling to be an interpreter. And so just advocating that they are professionals and should be paid as such. And if divisions aren't willing to pay the money, that's where you see the positions being vacant. Nobody wants to work for that amount of money.
That's true. Okay, so I think we're almost in our last a couple of minutes left. So I'll ask you to give your final messages to our viewers today. Anything that you would like to say?
Well, I have to say, like, because I'm going to be retiring soon, thank you to everyone who has welcomed me into their classrooms. I love the work that I do, but I'm just getting a little old to do it. It's been 37 years. I will always be an advocate for deaf students, whether I'm working in the field or whether I'm retired. I will always be an advocate for the needs of deaf and hard of hearing kids, because I really do care about their opportunities and their education. And the other thing that I've learned, if there's anything I've learned in my 37 years, it's that deaf kids need to be around deaf adults, and they need to be around other deaf kids. That's how they learn how to do life and how to identify as a deaf person. You know, they need to be around other deaf people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For you,
Just
Meaghan?
thank you for having us here today. I think the main thing is be open-minded and be willing to work as a team, because sometimes it's hard when you have so much going on in a school to have extra people come in all the time and take your time, but know that we are the experts in this area and we want to work as a team. And I think that several divisions do that really well. And we have positive relationships with so many, for me personally, with the divisions I work with, I have a positive experience with them. And I think it's just being open-minded and learning from each other, because I think everybody can learn something every day. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming today and sharing all your experiences and some lessons that I really learned a lot today.
Oh, good.
Especially for me who has a son who's deaf. So it's really good to know. And I think for all the general public, if you, I think it's good for us to know more about the deaf community, so we could be aware how we can also communicate with them, interact with them. So I think this is a very good opportunity for you to come.
Perfect. Thank
today.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll see you again on our next episode of Coffee Chat.